Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on July 5th, 2023 at approximately 4:20 p.m. PST. Now, I've returned to this world at this time for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the precise philosophies I personally guide my own life by. Now, with this in mind, before we get any further, and following what we were asked yesterday, we are going to take a look at what life is like living in a cemetery. How do you actually survive it? Now, do understand, I am not talking about you personally being dead. I'm talking about living in a home where a cemetery, where you may find cemetery plots around your home. This is in the cemetery. I'm not talking about literally living in the cemetery, although I personally have nothing against it. But then I'm a little twisted. Now, with this in mind, before I go any further, we have eternity in the house with the gold. And what do we got here? And then we have Adam has come in with the silver. Emmy has come in with the bronze. And I don't know, that's where we've ended, where we've held up for the moment. We'll keep an eye out for it. Now, Kylie, you are in with honorable mention. How you doing? Now, I've started a few things. Okay, as far as that goes. Well, you make sure you pay attention to the road, and much more importantly there, Adam, you make absolutely certain you pay attention where the other drivers are, because I'll tell you, you already know this more than I do. They are dangerous out there on occasion. Now, before I get into living in, here's a real neat thought for you. You may live in a house, in an apartment, in a subdivision. When we're talking about living in a cemetery, the only difference between your neighbors in a cemetery and your neighbors in an apartment building or in a subdivision is that the neighbors in the cemetery are no longer physically active. They've got dead cars. Okay. Now, I'm sure some of your neighbors in the subdivision or in the apartment area that you live, okay, I'm sure some of them have dead cars. There's just a much higher ratio when you're surrounded by a cemetery. Joe has joined us. Joe goes, I'm still pulling both foots out of my mouth after a very long day at home. The funny thing there, Joe, I never question if I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. I question how I'm going to put the other one in beside it. And Nathan, how you doing? Nathan is here with the Quantum Show, and of course, well, in all fairness, he didn't bring the Quantum Show with him. He keeps that one sitting around elsewhere. Now, what do we got? I want that out of my way. Thank you very much. Okay, let us bring up Nathan, the Quantum Show. And this is the link to Nathan's show. So absolutely drop in, give him a listen. If you like what he has to say, absolutely give him a thumbs up, subscribe to his channel, and share the daylights out of it. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me there, Nathan. I usually just carry on, put my foot in my mouth. But, as has been suggested, and Derek, in case you hadn't noticed, well, I already know you've noticed, but I have started putting out the shorter videos. Still looking at how I can actually do that effectively. What do we got here? Nathan says his Mercury arrives tomorrow. Then he begins testing to make that speeder bike of his. And I do hope that, Nathan, that you will keep us posted. I know you'll keep everybody posted on your stream in the Quantum Show. That's obvious. But I do hope that you'll keep us posted here as well as to how things are progressing, whether you're making the headway and what have you that you're aiming to. I'm looking at it this way. We have an opportunity here to turn this world completely around. Uh-oh. What do we get? There goes. And guess what? I lost my mojo today, but I digress. That could always be fun. I lost my marbles the other day, but I think I found a few of them. The neat part about it, when we take a look at where our world is, if you look at a cemetery now, of course, when my parents passed away, well, before they passed away, Mom and Dad told me they weren't having a funeral, they weren't having a gravesite, nothing of it. I looked at them and I said, and of course they went, "Does that bother you?" I says, "Dad, just because I'm curious, why not have a gravesite? Why not have an apartment building, really, or an apartment, really?" And he goes, "Well, I don't want you guys to be tied to the gravesite." I looked at him, and of course, my immediate reaction was, "Dad, why would I be tied to your gravesite? You're not going to be." And I'm telling you, if you're around a gravesite, okay, number one, the odds of you actually feeling something going on are pretty good. If you're empathic, you are almost certain to feel things going on. But like with a normal subdivision, get to know your neighbors. If you want peace and quiet around your area, get to know the neighbors. Now, in the case of a gravesite, okay, you read the door, you read the stone, find out who's there. That doesn't mean you have to knock on the door and say, "Hey, would you get up? Can we go play, or let's go get a drink?" Although I'm a firm believer, if you can get the dead to get up and come and have a drink with you at the bar, or for that matter, in the middle of the cemetery, and you can have them show up visibly, I'm telling you, it's a great showstopper for the rest of the neighborhood. Most of the people that pass away and end up in a gravesite have two things in common. Guess what the first one is? The first one's very important. That most people in a gravesite happens less and less than did in the Middle Ages. A lot more of the uncommon people end up in the gravesite. But there's two things they have in common. Oh, that one I will get to, Cowie. Okay, Cowie's just asking. It makes me wonder why we keep coming back life after life. That is a topic that, as a matter of fact, that's an excellent idea. Don't think that's where you were intending this to go, but I gotta stand up because I can't reach my calendar. Today we are there, tomorrow. Okay. What is that? Can't read it in the shadows. Oh my god. Oh. Okay. Now, just to be clear with this, we're looking at the cemeteries today. Tomorrow I'm not online. Okay. Tomorrow, more to the point, tomorrow I won't have a live stream. Because guess what? Tomorrow's gaming. And that's not being given up. On Friday, we're going to take a look at dreams and meanings and what they can tell you, and how to figure out how a dream how a repeating dream can tell you what's coming up. But with regards to why do we keep coming back life after life, that one we will take care of on Saturday, on the 8th. Just writing it down over here in case you couldn't figure it out. So, Cowie, on Saturday, we will end up turning around and actually and we will discuss why people keep coming back lifetime after lifetime. How are they linked together, and what's the whole purpose of it? Okay, Mary, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Now, what I'm looking at here, when we take a look at a gravesite, okay, essentially you're talking about a small apartment building. Now, the neat part about it is if you're a gamer, this will make sense. Okay. If you're a gamer, if you play D&D at all, this will make sense. Picture, if you will, a little tiny box. Okay, this 6 foot by 3 foot box. Okay, I think that's about the size of them. How you doing there, Shay? Glad you could join us. Picture living and you get this little tiny box. But in gaming terms, you're looking at literally Leomund's tiny hut. It's a little place, but it's got a whole bunch of room, okay, inside it. Okay, not exactly an extra dimensional, but it is a bit of an extra temporal. Okay, but the way to get along when you're living that close to a cemetery, get to know the neighbors. Now, I will tell you, most of you will find it more comfortable going for a walk in the graveyard during the day than you will in the night. Me, I'm a little twisted. I'll go, if I'm going to go, I'll go on a full moon. It's different. Okay, but then I've always looked at the world differently. Now, that being said, a couple other things I'm working on here. I don't need that. Yes, I keep standing up because, well, I sit still so well. Couple of things I am working right now so I can keep a handle on them. I've got this little card that sits right down in front of me here that tells me what countries I'm looking at as far as who's coming into the stream. Right now, we have Canada, US, England, Denmark, and Australia. I'm watching for the others. But I have this second card that tells me where the newsletter is going. Now, where do I got here? Missed one. Because I know I sent one there and didn't go back to it. Now, this one covers where the newsletter is reaching, both hard and soft copy. And right now, we are in Canada, the United States, and Australia. And again, I'm going global with this. This isn't a question of, is it going to happen? And I will tell you, Derek, you have been phenomenal at suggesting ways of enhancing coverage. Okay. But you take a look at what's going on around you, who your neighbors are. Neat part about it is, especially if you're empathic, you can actually learn to understand the intentions of the people in the gravesite next to you. You know, one of these days I'm going to slap myself in the back of the head just to quit stuttering or stumbling or whatever you call it. Now, what was today? Let's pull that out of the way, and we have today's the 5th, which means I got to bed at 1:30 this morning, was back up at 5:30. And yeah, I did lay down from 2:30 until 3. I don't know if this is healthy or not, but since I don't get the cold, I don't get flus, I don't get any flu. Haven't had that in over a quarter century. The only thing I tend to do is I do this neat little thing. My heart stops, I die. I wait a little while, I get back up. It's kind of an inconvenient little problem. The dying thing. But, it's always nice to get to know your neighbors, especially if they're in a graveyard, because the Lord knows sooner or later you're going to die. And you will end up passing away at that point. So when we take a look at this, okay, there's nothing real, there's no real big secret to surviving living in a graveyard. The only thing I tell you is it's illegal to break into your neighbor's house if you're living in an apartment building or if you're living in a suburb. You're not allowed to break into their house without knocking. Okay. I'll tell you, in the graveyard, it is worse. You get caught breaking into the neighbor's house, they chalk it up to grave robbing, and then instead of being charged with B&E, they charge you with something a whole lot more complicated. And rest assured, I have no idea what that charge would be. But I do know you end up doing a wonderfully extended period of time in the vertical bar seat. Football, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Now, the nice part about it is there's a lot of really, really nice people. Okay, a lot of really nice people that are just laying around in the graveyard. Now, I have personally witnessed people getting up from their gravesite, walk the length of the graveyard, and climb into somebody else's coffin. And no, you don't hear what's going on in the other coffin. Okay, well, that's not 100% accurate, but most people don't. Okay, but in case you hadn't noticed, coffins don't actually have windows that you can leave open. So with that in mind, graveyards are a wonderful place. I do absolutely, and I'm going to say insist, although I can't do anything about it, when you're in a gravesite, absolutely walk down the aisle, walk down the lanes, absolutely stop, acknowledge the people that passed away that are laying there, but don't walk all over the grave sites. Okay. Oh, I don't think those are called psychos unless they're, football's going, there were psychos shooting fireworks at 4 this morning. I don't think they're called psychos unless they were firing the fireworks at the other buildings, which, by the way, is a really bad idea. But I have literally witnessed ghosts get up from one graveyard. I remember I was at the graveyard one day with a friend of mine, and he had asked to have a spiritual, and he says, I'd really like to have one of these really weird spiritual experiences that people tell me you have. So I took him down to the gravesite and, down to the graveyard, and we're sitting there quietly. You never, ever, ever move anything that has been left on at a gravesite, ever. Okay, that's not 100% correct. If you're there and you've got damp cloth and you want to wipe down a gravestone and tidy it up a little, there's nothing wrong with that. Move the dirt off it. Okay, and I don't mean dig up the grave. I mean move the dirt off the stone. Okay, nobody's going to complain a whole lot if you're washing down a gravestone and making it look a little better. Well, I do hope, football, that you live in a rural area, and that these people are actually using the weapons, intelligently, if you will. Skip Malou, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Oh, well, Shane, I can't say who's up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but quite often or shooting fireworks. I do know quite often I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning anyway. But the neat thing about it, where you're talking about living in a gravesite, and I did catch that there, Joe. Joe's going, I'm perfectly fine having a cemetery as a backyard, living right in the middle of one. For me, if that were the case, I can't, for me, if that were the case, I can't do it, especially at night. Well, that's very much the issue. Okay, yeah, it is. Skip to Malou goes, my mom's old dog has stolen many teddy bears from the graveyard. It's odd from that standpoint, but let's face it, we can't exactly incarcerate a dog for doing what it does, aka collecting stuffies. And the whole idea of trying to stop a dog when it decides it wants to go someplace, good luck with that. But I remember sitting there with a buddy of mine, and we're sitting there quietly. It's like midnight, and he points at this one gravesite, and he goes, Did you see that shadow come out of that grave? I looked at him and I says, yeah, it went from that one and walked over 4 and crawled into that one. And he goes, yeah, you saw that? I says, no, I'm making it up as I go along. I said, come on, let's go for a walk. Well, as it turned out, because we went down, checked out the 2 grave sites. As it turned out, the 2 grave sites were from 2 people that were very clearly marked on the grave sites that these 2 were a couple. They weren't married, but they were a long-standing boyfriend-girlfriend. And all it was the boyfriend got out of the grave and went over to visit his girlfriend. I'm telling you, when we talk about love cannot carry on, that was proof positive. Love carries on past death. Okay. Yeah, football goes, I saw a pit and rattle at the cemetery. Past lives, and the reality is we will deal with this with the carryover on Saturday. But if you love someone enough, and I've seen way too many cases where somebody passes away and then they come back across the border to let their loved one know they've made it safely. It's kind of a neat experience when you witness it happen. But the real trick to it is as you get settled in, really take the time to get to know who's sleeping in the neighborhood next to you. Because all the gravesite is, and this is way oversimplified, and many may call this sacrilegious. Yeah. Skip to Malou goes, ever see the old gravestones just dumped in the corner? They're waiting the letters and dates to be removed and sell it again. This does not surprise me. But realistically, William Shakespeare said it brilliantly on stage one day. Now, I was only 6 at the time, but I remember it absolutely crystal clear. He stands up on the stage and he's talking about his work as a playwright. And yes, William Shakespeare was also a satirist. And he's standing up there and he's telling the audience that, look, he says, if the dead were to all stand up at the same time, we would have one massive population problem. Okay, and I'm telling you, the dead do not sleep when they die. For those of you that think you're going to be in a gravesite and that's where you're going to lay and rot for the rest of eternity, I will give you this. Your body will stay there. Let's not have any worry about this being the dawn of the dead. The dead bodies don't come out of the gravesite. And yes, there is such a thing as actual zombies in today's world. But that's a topic for another day. Okay. Football goes, heard a ride, two people. Whoa. I heard a ride. 2 people died in a car wreck and held hands flying to heaven. That would not be a shock. I've seen that. I've seen some of the deaths I've seen happen. They've been absolutely incredible. And don't get me wrong, this is not meant as any disrespect for the people. Okay. But sometimes people are that tightly tied that they just won't let go. Okay. But there is a way, we got to realize that life is one thing. Death is a transition to another world. Okay. Emmy's going, hey, Keith, did you ever hear the story about Burke and Hare, the body snatchers? True story from the 1800s. Did I ever hear of it? I've heard of all sorts of stories from body snatchers, about body snatchers, but that one specifically, no. But body snatching was quite normal because the physicians were paying for the body parts. Joe's going, the best thing I can do in my situation is record video of what I'm seeing, photo also, or what I think I'm seeing or hearing. And that is a problem because, what you're seeing, and the neat part is what you see with your eyes, as you know, Joe, as many of you who use photographs know, what you see with your eyes is not always the only thing that the camera picks up. Now, am I a videographer? No. I will tell you right now, I've had some people send me videos and go, what can you tell me about this? I have no prayer of telling you if it's video, if it's photoshopped. None at all. Okay. I can tell you only if what I'm looking at does fit with what I know of the paranormal. That's all I can tell you. I am not a videographer. Okay. And I certainly am not a video analyst. So what I look at is absolutely use your photos. In your case, Joe, I'd lay odds you've got one heck of a library. Derek's going, I see cryptids daily. I see people, I question whether they've got any of their marbles daily. Does that count? But, the neat part is what I've come to understand with a lot of what people are calling cryptids, a lot of them have a rational explanation. They've got some sort of a viable background or grounding in the way of ancient races. Now, that again is one of these neat little topics. I can see we could go all over the place. But when we take a look at the gravesite itself, now, Derek goes, my son is a little Bigfoot and my daughter is a little elf. Now, I'm not sure if you're saying that as a compliment or as an insult. I'm presuming you're quoting it as a compliment. Because the way I find it there are many things you'll see go through the graveyard. The thing that I found was really neat is I can walk into a graveyard and talk to the plants that are guarding the grave sites and see how the people inside are doing. And yes, I know what that sounds like. Okay, it's like, gee, Keith uses more than just coffee. He's also got all sorts of other things. Not entirely true. Matter of fact, not true at all. Okay, because I gave up the extra herbs and what have you a long time ago. But what I can tell you is, to be frank, many people are taught to fear death. I'll tell you, death, it's a little redundant for me. I've done it way too often. Death is not something to fear. Yeah, Joe goes, the big white floating apparition I saw. I wish I had a video of it, but it caught me completely off guard. Yeah, my ex actually had that. Okay, and I missed it altogether because, quite frankly, from my end, when I go to sleep, I'm dead to the world. It's just the end of it. But she woke up one day, and she looks above the bed. Is this apparition that's floating? An apparition encased in a burial shroud. Okay. And considering, as she described it, considering the fact that it was apparently wet, we can safely say it got buried at sea. Now, why it showed up in her house, I don't know. In our house. Except for the fact I have a tendency of simply talking to them and accepting them the way they are. So when you take a look at it, understand when you're being buried, okay, the body is absolutely going to stay put. There are very few cases where I've heard, at least not in Western Canada, in the Western world. Down in the South Pacific, I know they still deal with zombies. And I mean, literally, they raise the dead. This does not mean that these are functioning people in society. Although I've seen a lot of people in society, I do question whether their brain died a while ago. But down in the South Pacific, they do actually work with that sort of thing. Up here in the Western world, and for that matter in Europe and Asia and what have you, that seems to have gone the way of the dodo bird. Okay, but what I will tell you, when you're living next to a cemetery, watch the cemetery at night. One thing you'll see that you're likely to see is what they call is the dancing lights, the fairy fire, the little sparklies that travel all over the graveyard. These are the souls. Now let us not forget, you brought this idea of recycling gravestones. Well, I don't blame him there. In football goes, this guy in Asia had strippers at his funeral. Well, as long as they weren't flesh stealers, we're good. But people are taught to fear death. You're going to die, you're going to go wherever. Tell you, there's a lot of misinformation out there. But it's really not that bad. But I will tell you, much as we have gravestones being recycled, can you picture what would happen if we didn't? Picture the hundreds of thousands, the millions of people that pass away, and they're not all getting cremated. So yes, there is no question you'll find graves are stacked. Okay, over the years they will remove the gravestones. They will put another body in on top of the other one. Okay, net result, you can have many, many, many floors in that apartment building. Okay, I know it sounds weird and it may sound like I'm being very disrespectful. I hope that's not the way people take this. Okay, but if it is, there's nothing I can do about it. I will tell you, when a body dies, the body dies. That's the end of it. Okay, but you'll notice I said the body dies. Now, yes, I'm an anomaly. My body dies, I get up and carry on for another while. What do we got here? Oh, Shade's going zombies. This does not mean they are functioning members of society. Well, that's very true. I have met a lot of people. I watched a guy, I kid you not, talk about the zombie apocalypse. I watched a guy come out of a shop, and he's got his head down, he's looking at his camera, or he's looking at his cell phone, and he's punching a number and punching around on it. He walks out into traffic without looking any direction. Okay. Like just out into the middle of traffic. And I'm sitting there going, death wish? It's a pointer. Football is asking what animal is on your shirt. It's a pointer. And no, I am not a hunter. And frankly, it came with the shirt. Now, I have thought about, I could always remove it, but then I end up with a hole in my shirt, and I burn those anyway. Yeah, and Derek's going, also, French underground, they have millions of skulls made out of walls stacked on top of each other. I think that's made into walls. The reality of it is that, let's face it, the bones take a while to break down. But I don't personally see a problem with it. Of course, let's face it, I got a skull behind me on the counter. I don't fear death. Okay? It's funny when I get over there. I've been over so often. It's just absolutely bizarre. I remember the last time I died, I showed up at the gates. And, they're standing there. It's like, what are you doing here? I said, well, I just dropped by to see some friends. I'm only passing through. I'll be back. I'll leave you alone. Right. And all they do is, if it's a new person on the gate, it's like, well, you know the rules. I says, yeah, I'm not allowed to tell the people that are here that it's up to them when they leave. Okay. That's for them to figure out. And it's the same as I'm allowed to tell you. You end up dying. You end up going to hell because that's where you figure you're going. Okay. I'm telling you, you'll figure out this anyway. When you get over there, You can leave hell when you're ready. Okay. But it requires you taking responsibility. Yeah, I don't have those. I appreciate that. I don't have the long claws. Temperament, pretty much. I like to think I've got the honor, but I'll tell you, I've got a mouth that's just wrong. You know, I remember watching the movie Wolverine, where he threw the one guy off the balcony, and of course the woman looks at him and goes, "How did you know there was a pool down there?" He goes, "I didn't." My son told me this morning on his way out. He goes, Dad, he says, it really is rough having a father that sees so much and can prove it. Right? He says, it's a pain in the neck on occasion. And Joe goes, I guarantee you this fall, my time, I will see plenty of spirits back there. And winter. Right now, summer, no. Everything's growing up anyway. Yeah, wildlife. Oh, I am going to have to take a look at that. I presume, Skip the Malou, I presume you sent that to my email. Where are we? Yeah, Emmy says they're called catacombs. They have them in Italy too. Yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely bizarre. The neat part there, Shade, is when I look at all of the characters, all the Marvel characters, Wolverine is the one that I really did connect with. What am I looking at here? Let's see if it showed up there. No, I'm not looking for that. Oh, that's an easy one to deal with. So we take that. See, this is why I go into my spam. Pop that back into there. I get so many people like, oh, this is an SEO package. Checking your website. It's good. Looks great, but it's not ranking. So I can, if you give me money, I'll make more. Where are we? Yeah, Derek's just saying, as above, so below, and it is very much. Messenger. Thank you, Skip the Malou. I will go there, and there it is. Looking at it now. Oh, nice. Yeah, that makes this makes total sense. I see what you mean by they've been thrown aside. And some of it they can reuse. There's a lot that can be done with those gravestones. I'm a firm believer that if you're trying to build a wall, like if you're trying to build a retaining wall, something like that, like those stones, would be useful. What do we got here, Derek? Oh, speaking of Marvel, Secret Invasion Episode 3 came out today. I haven't actually watched it, but if I get a chance, since my boys aren't home, I'll probably go and see it just to see what's going on. I will not be able to give you that answer, Derek, until I take a look at it. Until I take a look at the shows. I will tell you the scrolls themselves, I'm not sure which race they're stylized from, but I've never run into the actual scrolls as that goes. But thank you so much for that picture there, Skip the Malou. Like, this is the thing that I'm referring to. I can't tell you anything about the veracity of a picture, but I do know that is, to be honest, Shade, I really haven't, but I will tell you this. I do appreciate the question on it. Let me just bring up the thing that I do have. Because I do accept donations, and they definitely go to putting things together properly. I've got a number of things on the go. Where is it? I've got a number of extra little projects on the go. I need that. If you're inclined in that direction, this is the email that connects directly to me. Now in Canada, I tell you, it works as an email transfer. If you're not in Canada, then that same email works on PayPal. At least for the most part. I've heard some complications. I looked at Moon Knight. I wasn't really happy with Moon Knight, myself. But then I wasn't a real big fan of Moon Knight in the comic either. Oh, Chad, how you doing? Glad you could join us. And again, guys, since I've got that open, this is the link to Chad's archives. Okay, and again, absolutely give it a listen. It's not a question of whether he's still posting. Okay, it's a question of the information is there, and he's got quality information in my eyes. Now, of course, that's just my opinion. I actually lost a friendship over that because the person, they kept coming up with, well, you're just saying that, you're just saying that, but it's only your opinion. I looked at them and went, everything that comes out of my mouth is my opinion. LA, how you doing? Glad you could join us. I do hope things are going well down in your end of the world. The neat part about it from my standpoint is I am looking at building things, and I'm building a much wider array. And by the way, for those of you, because I know there's a lot of you out there that are doing writing and what have you. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. I shall absolutely do that there, Shade. Just gotta grab it here. Chad. Where the heck did the Chad show go? Oh, no. I think I did something absolutely ridiculous. This is going to annoy me to no end. What I think I did was I cut and posted it, which does not impress me. So I got to go back up here and see if I can find Chad. Oh, wait a minute. I think that's what I did. Bingo. I pasted over top of it. So, there we go. Thank heavens for small mercies. Here is the link to Chad's archives. There, that makes me feel better. Yeah, I thought I deleted that, but didn't. I multitask. I mean, it's just plain normal for me, but every now and again, computers complain. What is this? The nice part about it is we take a look at where you're living. Okay. We take a look at where you're living. That's where your community is. And the neat part about it is no matter where you live in the world, or in all honesty, wherever you die in the world, the deceased are simply people that no longer have a vehicle. That's all. That's why I get along with them, is I don't see them as any different, although I do see through some of them. The weird part there is I also see through some of the people I meet. And I don't mean that from a metaphorical standpoint. So I'm looking at this world. Oh, there you go. I look at this world going, we have to start working together. We've got to start making this world run properly. And by the way, waiting for the government, for the so-called elites, for a specific group of people to start making it happen, I'm done waiting. So I'm asking you guys to join me on this little journey and make this the little group of people that's going to make this world change for the better. Okay. I do believe we have an interesting situation here. See, in the last couple of weeks here, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong, as it were, but I'm down to 504 subscribers. Okay, so I don't know what's going on there. But, when we take a look at it, the reality of it is everybody's got a community of their own. Everybody's got your own goals. Now, that's not what we call news. Skip the Malou goes, Coke was found in the White House recently. Not entirely a shock. You got to remember, politicians are people. They are not immune to addictions. They are not immune to anything that the rest of the populace deals with. They have their weaknesses. You don't worry about what they're doing on that end. Unless, of course, if it's illegal, they shouldn't be doing it. But I don't know about you guys, but at least up here in Canada, I think down in the States now it's not illegal either. Well, Coke is. I absolutely agree with you, Skip to Malou. I absolutely agree with you, but I look at it this way. Okay. And that is that it would be nice if they held themselves to higher standards, but we as people cannot afford to put them on a higher pedestal than you are. Take a look at your own behavior. I love the way that Yeshua put it centuries back when people were trying going to stone a harlot. He picked up a stone and he looks at the harlot and they wanted to stone her to death. And he's like, let he who has not sinned cast the first stone. And he dropped the stone himself. Now, I'm not perfect by any stretch. I've done things that nobody will find out about, and because I'm not telling anybody. The only way to keep a secret is to not tell anybody not to tell anybody to make sure it doesn't get passed. From my standpoint, it's real simple. I take a look at a graveyard. I'll go through a graveyard. Not very often anymore, but when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in them. Oh, Joe goes, don't get me wrong. There is a beautiful 2 football field sized cemetery in Clarkston, Michigan, that me and my parents drive past to grocery shop. One of these days I want to visit it. Absolutely. And like I've said, there is absolutely nothing wrong with walking into a cemetery. Okay, there's no karmic law or social law that says you have to have somebody buried in there to get in there. Okay, I will tell you, if you're going to be buried in there, there is a law that you've got to be dead already. And personally, I'm happy with that. I'm not impressed with the idea of being buried before I'm dead. Of course, in all fairness, I'm really not impressed with waiting for them to decide if I'm dead. But the nice part about a cemetery is anybody can, Joe, you do not feel like you're 43. This is great. You feel like you're a lot older than that. I mean, as far as your bearing goes. Okay. You definitely carry yourself as a lot older than 43. I've talked to 70-year-olds that don't have the wherewithal that you've got. Mind you, age is not it's not a good gauge for whether you've got wisdom. I've run into way too many people. It's like I told people when I went looking for a partner, I gave up on one my own age. Okay, I just quit looking for one my own age because 90% of the people I ran into that are in that 5-year straddle over 60 are either brain dead or they're gold diggers. And I got no use for either type. But you always treat other people's homes with respect. I'd suggest you treat your own home with respect, but it's absolutely critical that you treat the neighbor's home. And yes, this means grave sites. If you're going into a graveyard, okay, you don't walk on the grave sites. You walk down the aisles. They're kept there for a reason. And you absolutely don't touch anything that's been left behind. Yeah, LA goes, when I was a kid, we'd pack a basket and spend the day at the cemetery, clean up our folk stones and at least 10 others nearby. And that is absolutely acceptable. This is what I was referring to earlier there, LA. If you're in the one thing that you're encouraged to remove from a gravesite is the dirt off the gravestone. Okay. Assuming somebody hasn't written some sort of message on, some sort of polite message in the dirt. Like for instance, we miss you, Dad. Don't wash the dirt away at that point. The message is there to let them know. It's funny. There's so many things that you can look at, and so many ways that you can look at the world. And that you can look at the world and find things to fear. Now I'm telling you, I've been there often enough. Death is not something to fear. Okay, it really isn't. I mean, the way you die can be pain, depending on how it is. Could be painful, could be problematic. It's just one of those things we look at. Now, let me see what's going on here. I don't know what that is. Oh, I will do that today. Why it ended up there, I don't know. There we go. I just saw something. Oh, there we go. I just figured I better double check emails and what have you. But the neat part about it, yeah, I know I'm doing that and I should be down here. Guess what? My mind never sits still. Even when I pack it in. Yeah, well, unfortunately, I'm sure you know why they're LA. LA's just going and just is letting us know. I used to love to go to the baby section. Nobody ever goes to those children's sections, and I always thought it was a shame to let them go forgotten. The whole issue that you look at there is most people, if they lose a child, have a lot of trouble going back to it. Uh-oh. Now, I gotta ask Skip to Malou because I'm not certain I've ever heard that term before. But what, if you can explain it in short order, what, pray tell, is face blind? I mean, I know what blind is. Okay. I'm just curious what the term actually refers to. But I've got a number of things. One thing I do want to announce here. I told you I was going to figure out how to do it. And I have. I am going to be putting together, a poetic anthology. And the only thing I'm going to require from people, okay, because what this is going to do is I've already got the size of it worked out. I went down today to check on pricing. Oh, perfect. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for the clarification there, Skip to Malou. Skip to Malou has just come out and said, I can't recognize a face if I don't know them. Okay. I'm partially that way. I reckon my problem is I can recognize a face, can't tell you who they are. Oops. Skip goes, it's really sad. Once punched a stranger. Now that you just have to wonder exactly. I mean, it's so much safer to punch a stranger than a friend. I don't agree with punching anyway. But then, like I said, I'm a pacifist. But no, I did determine that I'm starting to work now. Thought it was an old friend, so you punched them. Now that's a heck of a way to say hi. You know, I am now working on the guidelines as to what I'm going to be dealing with. But when I get the information sorted out, there is no way it's going to cost a whole pile for people. Okay, but what I will tell you is it will end up anybody that's part that is contributing to it will get the anthology back, thereby having a solid copy of their poem in solid form. And the only three things I'm going to require is the poem itself, $20 Canadian, and a letter stating that poem is your work and is not copied from somewhere else. Okay. Without those three things, I won't be dealing with it. And by the way, before anybody comes up with brilliant ideas, I'm pretty liberal on what I'm willing to publish. But erotica or adult entertainment won't be going into the book, so don't bother. I just won't print it. This will be an anthology that anybody can pick up. But I know there is a staggering number of people. Oh, okay. Yeah, Skipper Malou goes, not hard keys. I remember hitting a friend of mine one day, and it was pretty hard, but it was quite by accident. I was not expecting him to step into it. But no, I figure there's a staggering number of you out there that have a short story, have a poem that you're really, yeah. LA goes, took me nearly 6 months to recognize my Frank. Yeah, I have no doubt that was awkward. I know when I met my first wife, it took me 30 seconds to tell her I was going to marry her. Well, more to the point, she was in the room and I told our mutual boss I was going to marry her. To this day, I still get along with her. But, when we're dealing with the reason for, like, I take a look at the whole issue of the cemetery, and I've even got one of the poems that will go into the anthology is a poem I wrote, and I might have more than one. I don't know. I don't have a problem with putting more than one poem in each of somebody's into it. Okay. It's going to be $20, $20 Canadian per poem with an individual letter per poem that says this poem is written by me. Well, by you. Okay. Because if I don't have what I consider a stable rendition, I won't put it in there. I just won't gamble with it. Sorry, something backing up. What do we got here? Yeah. Skip to Malou goes, yeah, when I met my neighbors, my fiance was one of them. Took me a second to know and 12 years to catch him. Yeah, in my case, I told her right off the bat. I literally told my boss and pointed at my wife to me. I said, I'm going to marry her one day. Then I promptly ignored her for 2 years. Well, 18 months. But you got to remember, in my case, I ignored her because I'd already answered the 2 questions that most women that I've run into have. You know, they from my standpoint, it really boils down. I lost that thought process altogether. Yeah, that was an absolute bizarre setup. LA's going. I recognize Keith right off too, which was absolutely one of the weirdest setups I'd ever run into. You know, and it's something that it's one of those recognitions. Because by the way, and I'm not going into this one because it raises too many complications. But I will tell you this: we are talking about recognizing each other from and LA did recognize me first. Okay, but we are talking a past life memory. Okay, a past life friendship that literally spans the ages. The neat part. Oh yeah, and yes, LA. I did look at it. My passport doesn't run out till the end of October, so as soon as I get a couple of things cleared off, I'll be going down and booking the flight. I have done that a lot of times there, Skip the Maloo. I have been a teacher in many lifetimes. Sometimes I taught the old-fashioned way, as in not necessarily a nice guy. See, half of the people I know this lifetime, half of my real solid standing friends, I burned at the stake 400 years ago. So am I there, Ellie. I did find was looking at changing my passport, and there's too much that doesn't make sense, but doesn't run out until October 28th. So I'm coming down the beginning of October, and with that in mind, I just have to make a couple of payments, and then away I go. What do we got here? No, yeah, good doesn't necessarily mean nice, and nice doesn't always mean good. No, definitely not. But the one thing I'm certainly not is politically correct. Adam's just going, last time we were in Hungary, a family friend took us to the woods and showed us Roman burial mounds. You always watch for the ones where the burial mound no longer has anybody in it. You gotta wonder where they wandered off to. That's where it gets to be a little entertainingly complicated. Now, I hate to do that. I'm not cutting this down. That just about came out wrong. But somebody's got to get a bigger cup with an IV line. I ran out of coffee. So I will be back momentarily. And we are back. That shouldn't be open anywhere because it doesn't need to be. But I'm still back. I'll read that in just half a second. Okay, that's all that. Told you my brain doesn't always work right. So, what do we got here? There we are. Yeah, and see, I'm lucky from that standpoint, Skip to Malou. See, my coffee is extremely weak. I only actually drink it at approximately one quarter strength. You know, most people with a 12-cup pot will put 3 to 4 tablespoons of coffee into the coffee to make their coffee. I put 1. No cream, no sugar. But on the flip side, I don't have to taste the chlorine. Yeah. What do we got here? Yeah, somewhat's going on. I mean, we could go into that side of it. You know, from my standpoint, it's very simple. You know, from my standpoint, it's a simple issue. There's a lot of things that are going sour, but we have to remember the way to change that is for the people, not the government, not the elites, but the general populace to start working together to make things change. Okay, and yes, it can happen. You know, the reality of it is society is at a very difficult point right now. You know, it's at a very dangerous point, but it is something that can be turned. We've got a choice. We're either going to make this world a better place, guide it to a better light, or we're going to turn around and repeat what happened several times over the last several thousand years. Okay. And so far, mankind is going down the same road. And prices are increasing. The rich are getting richer. The poor are getting poorer. Everybody's pointing fingers at everybody else. It's got to stop. You know, the only reason I look down on the dead is because most of the time they happen to be laying down. You know, unless I'm watching them fly through the house, which is really fun. You know, that's just the reality of it. It is time for us to really start changing the energy patterns from everything we've got going. Now, I do believe I saw something here. What was that? That's always fun. Yeah, I will have to go through the notes here because somebody mentioned something in here, and I forget exactly who it was. But somebody asked about getting a copy of the newsletter, which I got no problem with. I just forgot who it was. I don't think I wrote it down. No, I know I didn't write it down. Let's see what's down here. Oh, Nathan, that does not surprise me. You know, Nathan just saying, I've been doing my best to be good to those immediately around me. Just vibe everywhere nicely. And that's pretty much the way I do it. Joe, let me see if I'm actually, the big problem I have answering that question, I'm just gonna pop it up and see what comes up here. Because the big question I've got is what, pray tell, a columbarium is. Columbarium. There we go. Oh, okay. The answer to that is yes. And I am talking yes this lifetime. Okay, but I'll tell you, it's almost overwhelming. I didn't know the name of it. That was where I was running into the delay there, Joe. Okay, but that's always really that's convenient. It's pieces of information like that that become really, really neat. Really useful, especially when I'm starting to look at the different writing and what have you I've been doing. The fact of the matter is, people keep telling me, and I keep getting told, and this is kind of tooting my own horn. It's like people tell me, "Oh, you're so nice to everybody," and I'm like, "It's a good thing my mouth doesn't actually do what my brain does." Guys, I don't handle crowds well. No, well, Skip to Malou. I spent years, age 2 through 5, in dealing with military labs, with the military laboratories. Had enough of seeing what's in the medical museums. Okay. I mean, I have no doubt they're fascinating. I remember being a doctor centuries back. Okay. I was coroner actually during the Black Death. That was a lot of fun. Was not fun the people that died. I lost a wife and 2 kids in that lifetime. And by the way, just for those of you that are not aware of it, the Black Death was only one of 2 that I'm aware of, where there was a secondary Black Death, okay, after the first one, I think about 400 years later. Okay, but you don't hear about that one because it wasn't as detrimental. It was for some people, but it wasn't as wide ranging. Yeah, no doubt there, LA. LA goes, I've seen too much of the real thing. A medical museum is sort of redundant for me. My dad was search and rescue and did a lot, and like even the dining room table I've got right now there were, and that's something that most people don't realize. And yes, that means all of a sudden people are going to go, oh, we're going to get hit again with another wave of COVID. Possible. I'm going to worry about it about as little as I did the first one. But I will still tell you, from my standpoint, it's real simple. If you're not feeling well, staying away from people, or if you don't deal with people well, staying away from them will certainly cut down on spread. I mean, you think about it. If you've got to be able to jump from one body to another, fleas are a prime example. If the animal that's got fleas doesn't get close to another animal, the fleas can't migrate. Same issue. From my standpoint, it's real simple though. I used to bury people for a living. Now, granted, I used to bury people 700 years ago for a living, but that was okay. 700 years ago, I used to bury people for a living that didn't object. 100 years ago, I used to bury people for a living and they weren't even dead. Which, by the way, does mean I wasn't that nice of a chap. But then I made no bones about that. My last lifetime, I was one brutal individual. I mean, you think about it, in today's world, if I'm out for a walk with my other half and somebody opens fire, the odds are I'm going to put her behind me, not the other way around. My last lifetime, I literally put her in front of the bullets. But then I didn't want to get shot, and she was the easy one to get to. But when you start looking at, and again, yes, I keep coming back to the same thing here. What's life like in a cemetery? Well, I'll tell you, if you're the person that's dead, yes, your room is an itty bitty thing, only 3x6x2. It's not a lot of room, kind of like prison. Fortunately, your body's stuck there, you're not. Okay. Like at that point, you're still able to go and do what you will within reason. There we go. Now let's see what's going on here. I've got to go through some of those. And let's go check spam here and see if anything showed up that I need to know about. Nope. Oh. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have, that's something I better do here. Get that out of my way. And have to go through email spam because I've got messages that ended up in email. So I will have to get a hold of some of those. Email spam. EM personal. I got a whole pile of email I got to go through. I'll tell you, you can get too many things on the go all at the same time. One of the things that, I love the opportunity that you've got, Joe, being able to look out the backyard and take a look and see what's going on. I mean, you want to know about life after death? Joe's got a front row seat. Yes, I've been there, done that, got the ball cap, got the t-shirt. Speaking of which, I am going to be making t-shirts. I just have to find the people to do it. Because I'm not interested in producing second-rate anything. I need personal. Okay. Gotta get those all responded to. And we have the newsletter that's going to have to be dealt with tonight. I'm going to be up again until, the wee hours of the morning. It's amazing. I was up this morning until 1:30, packed in at 1:30 and was back up at 5:30 and on the go. Although at least I didn't get up at 3 o'clock when I first woke up. And again, guys, two major factors here. Now, somebody in the chat room, and I know it's in here somewhere, somebody in the chat room did ask to get a copy of the email, and I forgot to make note of it, so I'll have to go back and find it. If it was you, would you be so kind as to repost it? And I'll make sure I get the name and the email address sorted around. Yeah, I like them. I'm just looking at this again here, Joe. And, there are no functionally crazy questions in my world. There are questions I won't give you an answer to. But in my world, what most people consider crazy, I just consider normal. And this is one case where there are people in this room that will absolutely attest to the fact that my world is a lot different than people think. But that being said, we'll see where things go. But I've got a lot of writing that's coming up. I'm adding things to the newsletter already. What I won't be adding to it is because it's too much work to worry with. I won't be dealing with horoscopes in the newsletter. Okay, there's an old saying where it comes to astrology. If you die and you're reading your horoscope out of the newspaper, if you don't like your horoscope, get a different paper. There's a reason for that. Okay, and it is way too accurate. But I am working on a search and find that I'm building myself for the newsletter. I'm looking at other things to add to it, as well as more articles. Okay, so it's going to continue to grow. There's no question there. And just out of curiosity, if I open this up, $20. So it's a very small circulation at this point, and this is one of the reasons why I'm not selling advertisement for it right now. I've only got 20 copies going out. Okay, And there's no way it's worth setting up advertising at that point. But I take a look at I keep letting this whole idea of funerals and what have you. I've lost a lot of people over the years. And if we look at past lives, I've lost a staggering number. But then so have you. Okay, but the neat part about it from my end, okay, is when you look at funerals, basically the general tradition is people gather around, they talk about what the person used to do. They talk about how much they've lost, they miss the person, etc., etc. I love the way the Irish lay it out, at least as I understand it. They have a party. They get up, they say, yeah, he was a lot of fun, right, or whatever, and let's have a drink with whoever. Now, I'm a firm believer. My estate's going to end up paying for the funeral anyway, so I figure I'll have a wake about a week before I die. I got to pay for the funeral. I may as well enjoy the party. Okay. And no, for those of you that are hoping to see that, I'm not likely to die at the party and get up and carry on. It causes way too many nightmares for people. What am I looking at? I'm looking at a computer screen. The reality of it is this. Graveyards, well, the way I figure it, when we look at it, my life is a little screwy. That's just plain and simple normal. Okay, but again, and I'm going to bring back up this issue for those of you that are tempted to go down to the graveside, down to a graveyard. Yes, the energy in the graveyard, because there are so many people that are coming back and forth. I do mean that literally. The weird part about it is when somebody dies believing they're going to spend the rest of the days in a graveyard. Okay, what happens is they get told that's where the graveyard is, and people use it as an apartment. They're constantly coming and going. This is why if you can see spirits, you'll see this and the energy levels rising out of the ground at night. Usually somewhere around midnight. They rise out of the ground, they go up into the air or wherever they're going. That one young lady was funny. Well, the guy, he'd get up late at night, he'd wander over, he'd spend the entire night with his girlfriend, and he'd come back right before dawn. Talk about sneaking around. I mean, you'd think it wouldn't be a big problem, but he always snuck around trying to make sure he wasn't seen. What have we got? Skip to Maloo's gone. Memory song. My song to my dad when he was alive. I told him I would do it. My promise was to burn his flowers and listen to that song. And that is absolutely fabulous, Skip to Maloo. The reality in my eyes is if you're going to tell somebody that you're going to do something, be they alive or be they dead, okay, follow through with what you tell them. The reason for that is energy out, energy in. If you're going to give your word on something, make certain it happens. Okay, there was a client I had who he came to me she came to me. He had said, because he told her flat out that the metaphysical world didn't apply. He was very logic based. And he told her flat out, if there was a way to get back and tell her, he would. Vice versa. She passed. Now I'm trying to, no, he came to see me. Yeah, she passed. But he told her that he would come and talk to a medium once. And if there was anything to what he was telling her, to what she had been telling him, he would acknowledge it. Well, he came to me. What do we got here? Yeah, they definitely do, LA. This guy, his wife had always sworn by mediumship and that sort of thing. And he was really down to earth. Now, why do I get the feeling the biker club funerals are kind of similar to an Irish wake? You know, but this guy came to me and he told me he was a skeptic. I said, I got no problem with the skeptic thing. Right. From my standpoint, I'm much happier working with a skeptic than working with a person that's just flat out, it doesn't happen. You know, if you're closed minded, don't bother me because there's just not a whole lot of use for it. But, and by the way, skip to my loop. I still strongly encourage people when you've got a goal like that in mind, write it down in present tense as though it has already occurred. Oh, there you go. But no, he come to me and we identified who she was. That was fine. And I finally, all of a sudden, on left field, I looked at the guy and I said, "Look, you got a doctor's appointment coming up next week." And the guy sat there, and of course, he's got his arms closed, and he's leaned back, and he's like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, "I'm being told when he tells you to take X number of weeks to recover, you're to do what he says." Well, all of a sudden, he's sitting there, and all of a sudden, he goes slamming forward, barely missed the table. Right? He comes up. Well, I'm killing myself laughing because this is in a crowded room. The guy looks at me and he goes, "What the heck was that?" I said, "As soon as I told you to make sure you listen, this is your wife hauled off and hammered you in the back of the head with an old phone book." Well, that was it. He lost it altogether. And it must have been 10 minutes before he could pull himself together. And he's crying. When I say he's crying, he wasn't unhappy, but he was laughing so hard he couldn't hold it together. And he finally gets himself together and goes and gasps out, "That's what my wife used to do. Every time she wanted my attention, she'd smack me in the back of the head with a telephone book." Understanding the guy was 6'6" and then some, right? His wife was only 4'3" or 4'4". Like she was a tiny thing. But she sure made up for it. And when we got done with it, the guy looks at me and goes, "You know," he said, "I told my wife that I would come and see a medium." He says, "I can't speak for the rest of my," he says, "I'm still as skeptic as a get." But he says, "In your case, there is no question." You know, now, am I perfect? Not even remotely close. Well, I mean, Jupiter, Pluto's remotely close to Earth. But, and by the way, Jupiter isn't the planet that's furthest away from the sun either, or not Jupiter. Pluto is not the furthest away from Earth. There is another planet the other side of Pluto in a much wider arc. But that's okay. They'll find out in about 50, 60 years. Oh, okay. So, I mean, I am looking at a lot of things taking place. And the one thing I got to remind you guys of is that this really is a question of us really taking the time, reaching out to each other, and giving the support that we can. Because I see it in this room, and the fact that I see it in this room, and like I said, right now I've got. Now, do we have anybody, just a curiosity for those of you listening in that have access to a chat room? Okay, in this chat room, do we have any, other than people that are in, I've got one thought at a time. What do you think? These are the countries I've already marked that we're into: Canada, the US, England, Denmark, and Australia. If there's anybody out there in a different country, I'd love to know, simply because of the fact that I am keeping tabs on it, just for my own records. I'm not actually writing down who's from what country. except in the case of if I've got to send an email, if I've got to send a hard copy of either one of the books I've got or of the newsletter. And by the way, no, the books are not available yet in PDF form. I've still got to work things out on that. Pat OC is saying that she is in Singapore. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. So I'm just writing that down because I should actually take a picture of it if I can figure out how to get it posted. But I don't know if you guys know what Boston heads are, but I've got over 100 of them in my hallway. I've got over 100 Boston heads. Show you what a Boston head is. That one I can do. I just can't show you the numbers. Yeah, with that door open, you can actually see them. If you take a look out that door, those are all Boston heads up around the door frame, right there. This is one up close. I've got over 100 of these things hanging in the hallway because this is just my way of reminding myself, which I don't really require the reminder, that everyone is equal. Okay, and this is just another way of doing it. But I'll hang that back up in a little bit. But yeah, they stretch halfway down my hall. And no, I don't travel a whole lot, so this is just another way of doing it. But that's why I've got that globe behind me, which you can't see with my head there. There we go. It's way over there. And no, I'm not gonna start doing calisthenics here. That's just way beyond my interest level. I figure I do my exercises usually. Well, that's always a bonus. Yeah, LA's going, they already know there's another planet. See, they do slowly catch up. I find, I discovered it, I don't know, some 30 years ago. I think there's another one out behind that. I'm just trying to look at it. Because I do know and I know NASA knows this, there's a planet closer to the sun than Mercury. As a matter of fact, it's inside the sun's photosphere. That's a neat little place called Vulcan. And by the way, Vulcans are not green-blooded, pointy-eared individuals that are strictly logic-based. That's not what a Vulcan looks like. Wonder if that might be a pain in the neck to try and pull up. Well, did not want that. Let us see if we go. Yeah, I'm not going to try and track that down. Not right now, anyway. But I take a look, at this. And when I look at graveyards, what have we got here? Something popped up. I'm just reading this here, Derek, if you're still in the chat room. Derek's just saying you can even pick a type of alien race and give a brief description of what they look like to a short video series on different races of the world. And, that's an excellent idea. That one I can actually put together, but I certainly won't be able to cover as much as I know. I can, however, give people an idea. Okay. But I'm looking at this whole issue, the graveyard thing. It was kind of a neat idea when I looked at it. It's like, is there any problem with living around graveyards? Well, there is if you're afraid of the dead. Now, do understand the dead on the whole can't do a whole lot. There are a couple of cases where that is very definitely not quite the case. Okay, not the least of which is the Amityville building. And that's one of those neat little buildings I wouldn't mind going and seeing. Of course, I'm a little bit twisted on that note. But I am looking at this whole situation we've got here. We've got to find a way, not relying on the government, not relying on the elite, and certainly not blaming them. Same as blaming the religions for society being a little scrambled. This does not make sense to me. Adam, how you doing? That's not a bad idea at all there. I appreciate the idea. I've got to get a hold of him, come to think of it. My artist, I mean. Because that'll take a little bit of money, but the money I can deal with. But I do have to get a hold of him. I'm also got to get a hold of my artist over in England as well. And there. Made a note, so I will deal with them within the next 48 hours here. I'll deal with them before the end of the week and get things started. But I got to figure out, I've got to take a look at inventory and all of that. There's a lot I've got to deal with. And no, by the way, one thing I won't be doing is going down to a gravesite and taking pictures of graveyards and going, hey, here's a really neat walk down memory lane. Not going to happen. Okay. I mean, if you want to go down to a graveyard, that's up to you. But like I said, where it comes to the grave sites, just like where it comes to an apartment building or a suburb, or for that matter, the downtown of the city, always treat people's homes with respect. The dead have a home in the grave. So you don't go wandering around on the roof. You don't take anything that's laying that has been left behind. Yes, I realize that the caretakers of the graveyard periodically go along and remove all the bits, all the dead plants, all the trinkets are left behind. But that's one of the things that they are paid to do, to keep it looking acceptable, so it doesn't look like a dump. Because let's face it, you take 60 years of people putting flowers at a gravesite, and all of a sudden we have this absolute horrendous reek of decaying foliage. Now, plants are a wonderful thing, but they still decay. Uh-oh. Not quite the last one for me. Unfortunately, LA, the ones and the government, they're a pain in the neck. Absolutely. I've got problems understanding what they're doing. But I will tell you, and this is why I've decided I'm building an empire. I'm building a publishing company. Because I'll tell you, the publishing companies that I've dealt with, without exception, have not followed through with what they said they would. And no, I'm not going to give you a list of them. Okay. Now, I've been lax in certain things, but the reality is that what I was told or what I understood, the way that it was led to believe, the big corporations that I've dealt with, they're the ones I won't trust. And this is why I said, as I build my empire, as I get more books out and I get the publishing company up and running, and I will absolutely, I can't give you a time frame because it depends on how many poems come in, but I've already got a file set up for it. No, I've got a file set up here. Tonight, I will be setting up a file for incoming poems. Okay, incoming poems, incoming short stories. But like I said, where it comes to the poems, I will require one little detail. Well, three. The poem itself, a letter stating that poem is written by you, and $20 Canadian. Then it gets put aside until I've got enough to actually make an anthology. At which point, the people that have contributed, and for pity's sakes, come to think of it, this fourth, be sure I get a physical mailing address. Okay, that way I can get it back to you. Skip the Malou goes, every year we hear about people destroying gravesites, smashing gravestones. In Copenhagen, people just, yeah, I mean, this is just, there is so much wrong there, Skip the Malou. I mean, you think about it. 40 years ago, respect was taught. Now it's almost disregarded. And this is something that, I come from that time frame. I'm 60 now. I was in my early 20s 40 years ago. Well, I was 20 years old, never mind my early 20s. But am I going to keep an eye on things? You bet. It was neat. I actually took a look. I was out for a walk a couple of days ago, and there was a young lass there. I think she said she was 86. Two knee replacements and a hip replacement. Okay, or vice versa. But she was out there cleaning up the yard. I have no idea what her name was, but she was cleaning up the flower beds around an apartment building that she didn't live in. Yeah, you just don't do that. I agree with you wholeheartedly in there, Skip Malou. You just don't do that kind of behavior. Okay. But people are looking at this. I mean, I could go on a rant all over the place for what people are no longer doing or what they are doing that is so wrong. But I'm telling you, with your guys' help, with your guys' encouragement, and it really was your encouragement that stopped me from shutting things down. Now, where it comes to the graveyards and what have you, they are just another apartment building. The people just have vehicles that don't run. So they park them in the garage and they carry on with their life. Okay, it's wonderful seeing it, I'll tell you. And Joe can attest to this one. When you're at a graveyard, they tell you it's absolutely dead in there. I'll tell you, it really isn't. It is much more active than the downtown core right now. And that's the downtown core of any city that I know of. But it really is time that we start helping people understand that we've got to work together. We've got to start treating the world and treating each other with the respect we desire to be treated with. Not like the old saying, and it came around a gaming table. The whole issue of, the normal saying is, do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Not do unto others as you fear they're going to do unto you, but do it first and then split. Okay, this is the way people seem to be carrying their life right now, and it's got to come to a halt. This idea of standing up there, and I mean, I was talking to a chap that he spent 60 years talking about the Bible, and I'm sitting there going, and you're still getting it wrong? This is terrible. I didn't tell him he was getting it wrong, but he did tell me flat out that God created everything but didn't create evil. Now, I hate to tell you this, but if he created everything, that's part of it. Yeah, Skip Malou goes, my mom lives near a gravesite with a person. He jumps up from the bushes and shows, well, politely put, exposes people, himself to people. Okay, apparently he's done it for years. Now there's something wrong with this individual. And you can call it whatever label you want, but that's one of those things that you just don't do. Again, it boils down to do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Now the problem comes where if that's what he desires other people to do unto him, he's not breaking karmic law, but he is breaking the other one. of you must follow the laws of the land in which you are, which is a more refined version of do unto of do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Ouch. Now, what we've got to look at from this point, and I asked you guys about this myself a while back. I know every one of you likely has a goal or a desire of some goal to complete. Oh, speaking of completing, okay, I strongly encourage you to start making it happen. But I was working on this the other day. Okay, so did I get it finished? Yeah, it'll now get put aside and wrapped up. Okay, but I didn't do anything fancy with it. What I haven't figured out is where'd the other one go? There's my other one. Haven't decided what color to do with this one, although I've got an idea. Okay, this one I haven't started working on. I'll be working on it in the next little bit, but the first one is done. And like I said, didn't take a lot of time, just took a little bit of effort. And where it comes to showing people, letting people know that you care, okay, or that they're not just a number, okay, this is just a way of doing it. It's not just go down and buy something. In all fairness, truth be told, somebody was throwing them out. Christine, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Somebody was throwing them out, so they left them in the lobby. I took one look at them and went, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Okay, so from my standpoint, Terry, how you doing? Glad you could join us. And Terry's just going, when are the elves going to come up from underground and introduce themselves to humans? If I recall, the first time that happened would be about 40 years ago. And I'm not talking about talking to me. Okay, but the elfin race and the dwarven race are already on the surface. Some of them have already identified themselves in a sense. Okay, now do understand with the fear base that mankind has, they don't come right out and go, hey, look at me, I'm this different race. But they certainly have a different bearing. Some of you have mistaken half elves for aliens. Okay, which technically they are. If we take a literal translation, an alien is somebody that was not born in the area that they are. So if you've got somebody that comes from the inner earth and they come to the surface, yes, in my eyes, they're an ancient race. They were here way before humans were. But the elfin race is already starting to make forays into the surface. Now, I will tell you this. If my calculations are correct from the other night, the time that all of that is going to happen, you guys aren't going to be happy about this, I'm sure of it. Okay. But when the revelation comes and these other races all of a sudden start showing up, you're looking at about 150 years likely about 100 years down the road. Okay. Because 150 years down the road, they're all over the place. Okay. It's at that point, it's going to look a little bit more like the Star Wars bar scenes. But the reality is they're already starting to surface. You've already seen some hybrid reptilians. There are hybrid Pleiadians on Earth. Okay, you will never see a hybrid. I heard somebody claim the other day they were a hybrid fire elemental. Now picture that. Okay, they're a hybrid fire elemental. And I'm looking at this going, fire. It's my recommendation, don't crawl into bed with this. Okay, it usually results in really, really uncomfortable outcomes. Oh, there we go. Fire elementals, also known as Hulk. Okay, the Hulk is the actual name that I got told of what a fire elemental is. And then your water elementals are your Waylosh. These are included in the races of the worlds, and I do have pictures of them. Okay, now I'm just putting them all together. Well, they're already all together. I'm just doing final edit, but that's a bit of a that's been an ongoing little detail. I just quit trying to figure out when I was going to get it completed. But I'm thinking that what I may do here, and I haven't quite decided, but I'm thinking I may turn around and do this and do the majority of this black with a white moon on one side and a yellow sun on the other. But I don't know what color to do the upper side here. Or maybe do it the other way. Do black on the ring and then do this. And then do this like a navy blue type color. What's your thought on it? Because I'm thinking the moon on one side, the sun on the other, just as a globe. Nothing fancy, because let's face it, I'm not exactly what we consider an artist. Or an artiste, for that matter. I'm not quite sure what the difference is, except for the pronunciation. Yeah, if I could actually make a star that looked functionally well, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah, I do appreciate the input there, LA. Yeah, LA. I'm just noticing I made the comment about when they're likely to be here, and LA goes, I'm patient. I'm a patient sort. I'll wait. Yeah, and come to think of it, there is a way I can do it. In the dollar store, they've got a template, much like the letters, with different astrological, or not astrological, astronomical things. The little cutouts. If I use one of those, I can do it without too much of a problem. So that actually is a workable one. Am I going to be trying to plan to paint like I did in one lifetime? Am I going to try and paint like Leonardo da Vinci or or any of those artists? No, because I'm thinking I really don't have that much patience for it at this point. What do we got here? All kinds of neat things going on there. Oh, there we are. I was looking for who it was that sent me the message, and I just found it in my email. And I wonder if, well, where am I here? I've got a whopping, we are coming down to the end, aren't we? And as you can tell, my throat's starting to seize, which is quite normal for me at this point. Yeah, LA goes, sort of like an asterisk. Yeah, I understand what you're referring to. Basically, it takes 3 lines crossing in the middle. Technically, I could take a 4th, but I'll figure that side of it out. It's the fact that my throat starts to seize after 2 hours. I can go 4 hours on Dave's show or on other shows, but, the fact of the matter is I'm not the only one talking. And the one thing I did come across, for those of you that don't understand why I end up doing this, as far as topic goes, it's this. I'm a firm believer that if you're on air, do not leave dead air. Okay, this is just a bad idea. Because to my way of thinking, It's one of those little complications. Now, I did not, the one person I didn't notice in here today, I've got a show with Raven in half an hour going into the rabbit hole. Come to think of it, hopefully I've got that. Where is Raven? There we are. This is the link. Now, Raven's asked me, we had to postpone it last month, but I am going to be on Raven's show, assuming everything goes well, in about half an hour. And that would be the link to her show. Yeah. And I know LA was on she had her own show. And she goes, in radio, a 3 to 5 second pause is a real no-no. This is why my mouth goes into hyperdrive sometimes. Brain is already there, so my mouth tries keeping up. And yes, I know I can put my foot in my mouth. Okay, but that said, I really do appreciate you guys sharing your time with me. Again, if you like the stream, do give us a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel and share the daylights out of it. I'll be on down the rabbit hole, or into the rabbit hole, or something to that effect. In about a half an hour, assuming Raven's computer is working. So we had to postpone it before, but that's where I'm heading. Until then, and look at that, I've still got a couple of minutes. So let me just take a look at something here, because I do like running into the two. Now, today is Wednesday. So on Friday, we're going to be taking a look at some of the importance of dreams. Okay. Now, I am not a real authority on dreams. Okay, as a matter of fact, I had one the other day. I turned around. Emmy, I appreciate that. I will have to look. I don't have any of that here, but I got to go down to the hobby shop anyway. So, Emmy's just saying, I think you should seal the paint. Otherwise, it might peel when they water a plant. Kiara, how are you doing? I'm glad you could join us. You caught us right at the end, and that's fantastic. The reality of it is, if you guys, for any of you that are listening, okay, if you desire there you go. If you desire a copy of the newsletter, absolutely get me your email address or your physical address if you want a hard copy, anywhere in the world. Okay, it's still going to be free. That's just the way that goes. But I just simply need the information if I'm going to get it to you, that's all. And Cowie, I will be getting yours out to you right quick like. What do we got here? I like the number 13. It works out well. See, I was born on the 13th. I kind of require it. Well, I was born on the 1st, too, so that's another one. But with this in mind, where are we? There we are. Now, thank you so much, guys and gals, for sharing your time with me. I really appreciate the support, and I really look forward to talking to you again in the very near future. Until then, absolutely take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.